Hi, everybody. Welcome to Community Sunday. So glad that you're joining in with all of us today. I want to share with you a story that a friend of mine, Pastor Damon McGee, shared with me last spring, and I just think about it all the time. It's a little town called Enterprise, Alabama, and in the middle of this little town, there is a statue of a woman in this beautiful, long, flowy dress, and she's holding a pedestal aloft over her head in this triumphant pose. But on top of this pedestal is a bug, a boll weevil to be exact. It's the strangest thing, and the story behind it is stranger still. See, in Enterprise, Alabama in the early 1900s, the main agricultural crop of this town was cotton. Farming cotton is what undergirded and supported the entire economy of Enterprise. And that is until the boll weevil arrived. The boll weevil is a little bug that's part of the beetle family, and it only eats one thing. It only consumes one kind of crop. You guessed it, it's cotton. Not a lot else could grow in Enterprise. The soil was too sandy, and so they needed cotton in order to survive. And when the boll weevil descended, it annihilated their crops. And each year, the yield got smaller and smaller and smaller. It was like a plague straight out of the Old Testament. And the boll weevil's destruction didn't just impact the farmers, it impacted everybody in the entire town. Because if the farmer couldn't pay his bills, he couldn't buy groceries, the banker was impacted, the merchant was impacted, and the whole town was looking at this destruction filled with dread. But then something amazing happened. Rather than giving up and throwing in the towel and surrendering to the inevitable destruction of their lives, the farmers pivoted to peanuts. In 1915, nobody had ever planted peanuts in that area of the South. It was only when the weevil wiped out the cotton crop that the farmers decided to try something new. And that something new, this pivot to peanuts, led to the prosperity of Enterprise, Alabama. Because instead of quitting and throwing in the towel and proclaiming there was no future to be held in their little town, let's board everything up and move away, they became the peanut capital of the South. Instead of going nuts, they planted them. And in 1917, regional farmers sold more than $5 million worth of peanuts. That's $89 million in today's economy. So in honor of the boll weevil, the town voted to erect a statue with a little plaque in front of it that says, "In profound appreciation of the boll weevil and what it has done to herald the prosperity of Enterprise, Alabama." And so that's the reason why there's a statue in the middle of this little town. It's very tongue-in-cheek. It's, "Thank you, Mr. Boll Weevil. If it had not been for you, if it had not been for the pain and the adversity and the struggle that you brought our way, we never would have learned to dig deep and survive and practice overcoming and figure out what it means to be resilient." And so today, the town celebrates the bug that nearly destroyed it, because in overcoming, they got to experience a life they never thought was possible before. And now the Alabama peanut industry is worth more, get ready for this, than $200 million. This little town is an amazing illustration of the power of resilience and the blessing of learning to overcome. Acts 8, we find a similar story. The early church is facing an existential threat to its existence, and Stephen has just been brutally murdered, and now the bloodlust of the Christian mob has been inflamed even more. In Acts chapter 8, I want to read you the scripture. It says, "Now Saul was consenting to his death, and at that time a great persecution arose against the church which was at Jerusalem, and they were all scattered throughout the regions of Judea and Samaria, except the apostles, and devout men carried Stephen to his burial and made great lamentation over him. As for Saul, he made havoc of the church, entering every house and dragging off men and women, committing them to prison." It was total destruction, complete annihilation. They must have been so afraid. But I want you to listen to their response. Instead of quitting, they overcame. Because verse 4 says, "Therefore, because of all this bad stuff, those who were scattered went everywhere preaching the word. They pivoted from Jerusalem to everywhere. They turned their adversity into opportunity to spread the gospel of Jesus Christ everywhere they had been scattered. They responded to the threat with faith and resilience, and as a result, revival spread everywhere they went, and the church became larger and more powerful and more full of faith than ever before. Unless you think this is just Acts chapter 8, here's another example. In Revelation chapter 2, John has this incredible vision of Jesus walking among 7 lampstands, and these 7 lampstands represent 7 churches, and each one had their own issue, their own threat, their own boll weevil, if you would, that if not addressed, had the ability to threaten their very existence. For one, they were faithful to the word and they were faithful to doctrine, but they had left their first love. For another, it was persecution and adversity. They were being tormented for their faith, and it was threatening to stamp out their faith. Others, false teachers had led people to compromise core doctrines. For others, they were compromising their morality and giving up holiness and surrendering to the wickedness and the lust of their flesh. Finally, another church was lukewarm, and they had lost their passion for Jesus. Jesus speaks individually. He speaks to each of these churches about their struggles, their threats, and their issues. Yet as diverse as they all were, he ends his message to them with the exact same words in Revelation. He says, "To he who overcomes." And then it's followed by a promise. Lukewarm? If you learn to overcome your lukewarmness, you're going to sit at my throne. To those struggling with sin and immorality, to he who overcomes, I will give you power over the nations. Are you persecuted? Are you facing adversity from friends and family for the stand that you're taking? Well, to he who overcomes, he will not be hurt by the second death. On and on and on it goes, church. If you will overcome, if you will be resilient, there will be a reward. See, here's what happens. When you overcome, you strengthen your faith. Faith is like a muscle. It needs adversity and pain to get stronger. And when you overcome, you find opportunity in the middle of pain and struggle that you never would have seen had you not chosen resilience. See, both of these passages, coupled with the illustration of enterprise, teach us the power of resilience and the blessing that can come when you choose to overcome by faith instead of quit. Now, the million-dollar question is, how in the world do we do this? How do we overcome? How do we choose to be more resilient? How do we pivot from problems to promises when trouble comes our way? Well, that's for you and your community to figure out today. Now, I've prepared some questions to help you, and I've put together some scriptures for you to read with your community that's going to help you in your discussion. Let's grow together. Let's learn together. I just want to say thank you for being a part of Community Sunday. I believe that God's going to move in the rest of your community as you unpack these scriptures together. God bless. Have a great rest of your day.